From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. What began with a bang appears to be ending with a whimper. The NFL player strike has crumbled, dissolved, come apart at the seams. You name it, and as of now, the NFL owners are in the driver's seat. As ABC's Ned Potter reports, when the players' representative said the players could go back to work today, he was way behind the curve.
With an independent expert.
This afternoon, a devastated Gene Upshaw said it was over.
It's unfair to the players to continue making great sacrifices that they have made in the face of blatant display of monopoly powers. The player reps, therefore, voted today to send the players back to work.
In city after city, teams had already voted en masse to go back to the stadium. But when they got there, they were told in every case that they had missed the deadline for playing this weekend.
Coming in, we're trying to give the fans what they want to see, the real football players, but we're being rejected.
That's the way the football strike of 1987 dissolved without really ending. Upshaw could not get a back-to-work agreement from league bargainer Jack Donlan. And in the meantime, 20 player reps reported their teammates were losing patience.
The bottom was falling out of this situation. And I think the guys were getting frustrated, waiting, and I think I did the best thing for our team.
Upshaw said the union would sue the NFL for antitrust violations.
We've tried bargaining, we've been on strike, now we'll let the courts decide.
Keeping the strikers off the field this weekend was one last slap, but labor experts say it's legal. The players are welcome to come back in and get paid $750 a week each. They'll just miss the $14,000 they'd get for playing.
Sounds like a lockout to me.
How about next week?
The strikers got almost nothing they asked for. And though the owners may seem victorious, some of them wonder.
I think that's the sad part about it. I don't think anything's been accomplished. I think we're exactly where we were when we started.
Today around the NFL, there are a lot of hurt feelings, but also some strikers who say they're kind of relieved. Next week, they'll take the field. Ned Potter, ABC News, New York.
Gene Upshaw will be Ted Koppel's guest later this evening on Nightline. And now a story which millions of Americans have been living with today. It was actually yesterday morning when tiny Jessica McClure fell into a small abandoned well in Midland, Texas. Today it became one of those human dramas that every so often just grabs at the imagination. You see, Jessica's 18 months old. ABC's Mike Von Fremd is in Midland.
Rescue workers have just changed shifts and completed a shaft 20 feet down. They are now within 6 inches of Jessica McClure. The child, though still trapped, appears to be okay, and workers are being careful so as not to do anything to cause the well to cave in. 10:30 yesterday morning, Jessica was playing in the backyard of her mother's small daycare center. When her mother, Reba, went to answer the phone, Jessica fell into this 8-inch wide hole to an abandoned water well. She dropped 20 feet to a chamber where she was wedged on her back in an area only 14 inches wide. A microphone was dropped down the well.
Jessica! Jessica!
Rescue workers were able to hear her cry, and oxygen and warm air were quickly pumped into the well. Neighbors held a prayer vigil while sophisticated oil drilling equipment was rushed in and workers began a shaft parallel to the well. They dug down below Jessica and began tunneling up to her so the well would not collapse and she would fall into their arms.
When I'm using that hammer down there are sparks coming off the bit. That's how hard the rock is that we're working against.
Several drill bits had to be resharpened as they worked through the night. Jessica's mother stayed by the well while her daughter actually managed to sleep in the hole. This morning, as the drilling continued, Jessica resumed crying, which doctors said was encouraging.
The fact that she's still crying strongly after 24 hours indicates that probably she's not seriously injured.
Fatigued workers digging in 20-minute shifts took all day chipping away at the rock, fearful of pounding too hard and collapsing the well on top of Jessica. When the workers reached the well's casing, Jessica's father was predicting the best.
But with the Lord's help and with your prayers, we know that little girl's going to make it.
Workers hope that they'll be able to bring the child out any time now, and they're extremely encouraged because they recently heard the child saying nursery rhymes and actually singing to herself. 18-month-old Jessica McClure appears to be one tough toddler. Mike Von Fremd, ABC News, Midland, Texas.
Actually, just a little while ago, after Mike filed that report, rescue workers say they had hit a rock. They needed more equipment, and they say now it will be several more hours before they can get Jessica free. In tonight's Money Matters, another rise in the prime rate. Chemical Bank of New York raised its prime lending rate today half a percentage point to 9 3/4%. And Chemical's announcement set off a late afternoon wave of selling on Wall Street. The Dow Jones Industrial Average finished down another 57.5 points, and the trading was very heavy. Later in this broadcast, Charlie Glass on how he escaped from his kidnappers in Lebanon. Should there be federal laws controlling surrogate mother contracts? And some four-legged friends of the court in California.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, brought to you by Wheaties.
It's been a long day, big boy. Feel like you still got something left? Sure you do. 'Cause you got one smart mama, and she got you off the ground this morning with a real winner. Howdy, whole wheat, time to gloat. 'Cause you don't wear no sugar coat. You just can't beat that pure whole wheat. Now go tell your mama what the big boy beat.
Ralph's family's got money. Maggie's family's had it for generations. And Michelle, she's set for life. Having a credit union is like having family money. Credit union members can borrow from family funds at very low rates. And most credit unions provide loan insurance from CUNA Mutual. So when you need a loan, turn to family first. Your credit union.
We take care of our own.
Overseas today, an Italian airliner crashed this evening shortly after taking off on a flight from Milan to Cologne in West Germany. There were 37 people on board the plane, which belonged to ATI, a subsidiary of Alitalia Airlines. There is no word yet on whether anyone survived the crash or on what may have caused it. Some leaders of the Nicaraguan Contras announced in Washington today that they will send a delegation to Managua in an attempt to have direct ceasefire talks with the Sandinista government. A Contra spokesman called it the hardball testing of whether the Sandinistas are really committed to the Central American peace plan. In the Persian Gulf today, an Iranian attack on a supertanker at Kuwait's main oil terminal. It is a significant escalation in the conflict between Iran and Iraq and Iraq's Arab allies. Here's ABC's Bob Zelnick.
Americans, but flying the Liberian flag, was taking on oil at Kuwait's Al Amati terminal when the missile struck. It tore a hole about 20 feet in diameter on the starboard side of the vessel near the bow. The tanker listed badly while Kuwaiti tugboats poured on tons of water to prevent an explosion. There were no casualties. Pentagon sources say the damage was done by a Silkworm missile fired from the Iranian-occupied Fao Peninsula. Sources here say the Silkworm was apparently armed with a terminal homing device, a mechanism attracted to metal which selects targets in the final stages of flight. The missile could just as easily have hit one of 4 American-flagged tankers, part of a convoy which arrived in Kuwait yesterday. Nonetheless, from the president on down, U.S. officials seem to portray the incident as not appropriate for U.S. retaliation.
Our policy is still, we're going to defend ourselves if we're attacked.
It seems to me to be a very hostile action toward Kuwait.
There is no response indicated in this present situation.
The incident comes as military intelligence is still trying to determine whether Iranian patrol boats fired a Stinger missile at U.S. helicopters during last week's incident near Farsi Island. Stinger debris found on the patrol boats, a flash observed by chopper pilots, and the preliminary interrogation of wounded Iranian sailors have to this point been termed inconclusive by a senior official here. Today's Silkworm attack suggests Iran may now be more willing to risk confrontation with the United States. Leaving the choice of targets up to a brainless homing device is rolling the dice in a very high-stakes game. Bob Zelnick, ABC News at the Pentagon.
On the subject of the Middle East, the second part in our conversation with Charlie Glass. Yesterday we talked to our ABC News colleague who escaped from his captors in Beirut about the treatment that hostages get and the kind of people who are holding foreigners. Tonight, the very personal struggle for a hostage. In this case, Charlie's the example to keep a sense of self when he is isolated from everything that is near and dear. And always the tantalizing challenge to escape.
Every morning I would wake up and I would say to myself, today is, for example, the 3rd of July, the 15th day of my captivity, so that I would not forget the days. You can pray, You can think, you can construct novels in your mind. I made out of paper a chessboard, played chess with myself, or pretended to be playing chess with my sons. I would talk to members of my family in my mind. There are ways of surviving mentally just by using your mind and not letting yourself daydream. For a few weeks, I was allowed books, but when they discovered that I was ripping pages out of the books, writing notes, asking someone in the outside world to come to my assistance, and putting the notes to the outside world through the fan in the bathroom, they took the books away.
How many people in that neighborhood do you reckon knew that you were a foreign hostage and that you were there?
I've thought about it. There were about 20 guards who knew where I was, maybe a dozen other more senior members of the party, probably their families, because people talk in Lebanon, and also some of the neighbors who saw me brought in and out of the buildings, and people who might have seen me driven along the roads. So anywhere up to 100 people probably knew where I was at any time.
Does this mean it's conceivable to bribe some of those people to tell somebody where you are?
It's conceivable that if rewards were offered, as they are in this country, for information leading to the return of a missing person, that people would come forward. Remember, Lebanon is very poor now. Not everyone in those southern suburbs is a member of or a supporter of the Party of God.
Now, of all the foreign hostages who have been taken in Lebanon, you escaped. How on earth did you do it?
I escaped primarily through luck, and I think by the grace of God. I was chained by my wrist and by my ankle. I began to tie the links tighter together with string, rubbing the rust from the links of the chain into the string so it would be the same color, so that two links which were like this would suddenly be like this, tighter together, so that one night, after the guards had gone to sleep, I was able to break all the threads and slip the chain off my ankle, pull the chain off my wrist, open the shutter to the balcony. Well, when I got out to the balcony, I discovered, much to my horror, that there was nowhere to jump. It was a 7th-floor drop down to the ground. I looked back at the building. I saw that there were two doors, one the one I had come out of. I could have gone back in, put my chains back on, and gone back to sleep, or gone through another door. I saw the foot of one of my sleeping guards in his bedroom. I could hear him snoring. I turned to the left, unlocked the door of the apartment, slipped out, and closed the door and locked it behind me.
Charlie, thanks to the efforts of a Lebanese cameraman, we are for the first time able to trace a hostage's location, and in your case, the route of escape. Can you give us a sense, by looking at the video here, what happened when you got out of the building?
I looked outside the front door, and I looked left and right. To the right, the road seemed to stretch into an infinity of slums. To the left, I could see a bit of light up ahead and a crossroads, so I turned to the left. I ran about a quarter of a mile up this street and came to the end where there was a watermelon stand where there were 3 young men asleep. But because they were young and bearded, I decided I wouldn't wake them up and ask for their help, because they'd probably be more sympathetic to the Party of God than to me. I turned right at the road. That's the bank I ran past. I saw the lights of this bakery. That was another quarter of a mile up the road. I ran to that bakery. I ran inside. It was empty, but it was open. My biggest fear at that time was that my guards had awakened, got on the two-way radio, called the people they worked for, and that they would be out in patrols looking for me in the streets. Just then a car pulled up. I started to hide, but then I saw that inside the car there was no Hezbollah patrol of young bearded men with guns, but a family, a husband, a wife, and a child. So I asked them for their help.
Why is it acting like it is? Why is Hezbollah capturing Americans and holding them?
I believe there are 2 reasons that Hezbollah holds Americans and French and other foreigners. First, to scare foreigners out of West Beirut, to keep them out, because they were mostly teachers and writers and people who represented an ideological threat. Second, they take the hostages into a kind of bank, if you will. It's like putting money in the bank. You may not know what you're going to spend it for now, but eventually you know you'll be able to buy something with it.
Charlie Glass, and that bank remains very full. There are at least 22 foreign citizens being held against their will, including the British Terry Waite, who tried to get other hostages out. 8 of them are Americans. 3 of them kidnapped this January. Jesse Turner, 40 years old, from Boise, Idaho. Alan Steen, 48 years old, of Boston. And Robert Polhill, 53 years old, from Fishkill, New York. Edward Tracy was taken hostage nearly a year ago. He's from Burlington, Vermont. Joseph Sicipio of Norristown, Pennsylvania, held for more than a year. Frank Reed of Malden, Massachusetts, also held since last September. Thomas Sutherland, now 56 years old, hometown Fort Collins, Colorado, a hostage for 2 years, 4 months. And Terry Anderson. He was 37. Look at that. He's now 39. He was 37 when he was taken hostage in the spring of 1985. His home is in Batavia, New York. Terry is a reporter for the Associated Press. Today, at the United Nations, representative journalists met with the Secretary General to see what he could do to try to win Anderson's release. And 2,000 journalists signed a letter written to the Ayatollah Khomeini asking him to help get Anderson released. When we come back, the debate over surrogate mothers.
What can brighten your day like nothing else? A little gold jewelry. What makes a woman feel good about herself? A little gold jewelry. Nothing makes you feel as good as gold.
Splish splash, I was taking a bath, long about a Saturday night. Gloved up, got a clog in my tub, so I jumped out and fixed it up right. Just poured in liquid Drano, soon the clog was all gone. If they call it liquid Drano, baby, know it's real strong. Yipe zipes and it won't hurt your pipe. Metal pipe or plastic, liquid Drano's just fantastic. Now I'm splishing and a splashing.
Liquid Drano, the liquid strong enough to be called Drano.
Is your breath a little strong? Then have a Milk-Bone dog biscuit to help scrape away plaque and food particles to give you cleaner teeth, fresher breath. Get Milk-Bone because, naturally, every dog wants fresher breath.
You probably can't name the first name in copiers, but for meeting the needs of every size business relies on the most popular copiers in America. From personal to high-performance copiers, the choice is Canon.
On Capitol Hill today, a House committee began considering what might end up as the first national law to regulate surrogate motherhood. It is a matter of enormous controversy. Is surrogate motherhood baby selling, or the last chance for infertile couples to have children? ABC's Ann Compton is on the Hill for us.
4 women wept as they told of their bitter experiences as surrogate mothers. Mary Beth Whitehead, who lost in the celebrated Baby M case, begged Congress to make the surrogate contracts illegal.
When this all started for me, I thought surrogacy was a nice way of helping someone out. Now I know that surrogacy is wrong for our society. Now I know it is wrong to sell babies.
Often it is women with little money and little education who are drawn into surrogate contracts with wealthier couples.
Infertile couples no longer have the right to expect society to satisfy their needs by asking American women to become their breeders and to use off the money to pay family debts.
Some contracts do work. 6-day-old Jennifer Ann Stevens was brought into the hearing to make the point that 99% of all surrogate mother relationships have happy endings.
Because of technology, I'm now granted the best gift that anyone could ever give us.
But Congress was warned the issue goes beyond surrogacy to the rapid development of even more sophisticated techniques in the fertility laboratories.
Those eggs that are more closely perfect, unquote, will bring a higher price in the marketplace, and those women who will be used as factories to gestate the children will be measured by their own genetic background and their own social background.
The congressmen were told a ban on surrogate mother contracts might be unconstitutional. One compromise might be a federal law giving any mother like Mary Beth Whitehead the guaranteed right to change her mind after the child is born. Ann Compton, ABC News, Capitol Hill.
Still in Washington, the Senate continues to wrangle over when there'll be a vote on not confirming Judge Robert Bork. We have just completed another poll on the controversial nomination. 56% of the people we asked believe that the process of considering a Supreme Court nominee has been distorted. A clear majority of people we asked believe that Judge Bork is qualified to sit on the High Court. Nonetheless, an even larger group now says it does not want him there. The Secretary of Labor, Bill Block, resigned his post today to run the presidential campaign of Kansas Senator Robert Dole. The idea is that the former chairman of the National Republican Party will bring organization to the Dole campaign. When we come back, capital to capital, as seen in the other capital.
For 75 years, Liberty Mutual has shown companies like IBM, companies like General Mills, companies like Ramada Inns, and thousands of others how to make their workers' compensation dollars work harder. As a result, they've made Liberty Mutual the largest insurer of America's working men and women.
America, believes in liberty. Liberty Mutual Insurance.
We are a nation of business, and to bring us together, there is the airline of business. Throughout the U.S. and 13 foreign lands, the airline trusted by business travelers for a half-century and more. United Airlines, rededicated to giving you the service you deserve. Come fly the friendly skies.
Red Lobster needed me to simplicate the create-your-own shrimp and seafood complications. First, you pick one of 6 selectable shrimp dishes, like fried or scampi. Then correlate it with one of your seafood favorites, like lobster mornay or blackened snapper. Create endless complications, starting at just $6.95. At Red Lobster, we know how you love seafood. But hurry, time's abbreviated.
And Friday and Saturday only, this lobster and shrimp special for just $10.95.
The end of a very long battle tonight for the woman they called the guardian angel of Soviet refuseniks. The Soviet dissident Ida Nudel arrived in Israel tonight. For 16 years she'd been trying to emigrate from the Soviet Union. The Israeli officials greeted Mrs. Nudel as she arrived on a private jet belonging to the American industrialist Armand Hammer. The whole question of human rights in the Soviet Union and the United States was discussed last night on the ABC News program Capital to Capital, which was broadcast live and unedited in this country, but also in the Soviet Union. ABC's Walter Rogers and 120 million Soviets were watching there.
The Kremlin in Moscow.
Soviet television tonight replayed in prime time last night's capital-to-capital satellite broadcast between Washington and Moscow in what was perhaps the most open discussion of human rights ever broadcast here. It pitted Soviet officials against elected American lawmakers.
What the world thinks, and what is true, is that the Soviet Union had been a hell for human rights for most of this century, and that you haven't yet even got back to the condition of the czars.
A Soviet spokesman deftly fended off these pointed American questions, although they came close to apologizing for a dark part of this country's past.
I agree with him in that the repressions of the Stalinist period is unacceptable, and we will never forget it, never forgive it.
The program was first carried live at 6:30 Moscow time this morning, and Russians saw everything Americans saw, including rare pictures of human rights activists like Andrei Sakharov and Yelena Bonner. The Soviets we talked to approved.
I think what was very interesting.
The capital-to-capital broadcast was unique because of the Soviets' willingness to air an opposing and critical view of themselves. The program also showed the growing sense of self-confidence the Soviets now feel. Walter Rogers, ABC News, Moscow.
When we come back, we'll go to California for a day in canine court.
I can't marry you.
Why? I'm only 6 years younger.
Oh, I don't care about that.
What do you care about? My hair? My tie?
Your breakfast.
This?
Yeah, it's old-fashioned.
Hey, I'm an old guy.
All those years of sugar and preservatives.
You're right.
Healthful Nutri-Grain. Only the whole grain, with no preservatives and no sugar added.
That's good. Now will you marry me?
I thought you were 5 years younger.
Kellogg's Nutri-Grain.
You're working on your American dream, 'cause you want it to last forever. And if something is starting to show the years, you want to make it better.
Give your home new Anderson windows, because when it comes to your home, nothing but the best will do.
Come home to quality. Come home to Anderson.
Where can you go to buy Anderson windows? Call 1-800-255-2550.
Paul Newman's brother.
I'm Arthur Newman. I'm no heartthrob, but Dean Witter still handles my investments with tender, loving care.
You're somebody, a Dean Witter.
A member of the Sears Financial Network.
Circles and turns while my stomach burns. My trip. Mylanta 2.
Double strength Mylanta 2 tablets. Nearly double the acid neutralizing power of any leading brand.
Because my life takes Mylanta 2.
Tonight on Nightline, the NFL strike collapses and there's plenty of bitterness on both sides. Ted Koppel talks with Players Union Chief Gene Upshaw about what's happening to pro football.
And finally this evening, democracy going to the dogs. Even at this point, someone may have thought it will make a television series. After all, Hollywood imitated life and gave us divorce court, superior court, family court. As ABC's Gary Shepard reports from Los Angeles tonight, in real life, it is already Canine court.
I'm yelling because I'm upset. I'm upset that these people are lying and saying the dog doesn't bark at night.
Welcome to Canine Court, LA's answer to the deluge of nuisance cases involving unruly dogs that up until now has clogged the regular court system. That's Emily, the bailiff, telling everybody to quiet down. The defendant in this case is Roxy, a golden retriever accused of barking for the past 9 years and disturbing the neighbors.
You feel that the dog barks. The dog barks if a leaf drops in Lake Arrowhead. The dog barks all the time.
The judge is dog expert Matthew Margolis, who listens to both sides and decides what should be done. In this case, he demonstrates how to correct the problem.
What we want to do is control the amount of barking. So what you do is you go, cut. Dog stops. Good puppy.
The case of Roxy, the dog that barked for 9 years, is now over, and let's find out how the participants feel about it. This was your dog's first time in court.
The first time in court, right.
How do you think he did?
He did very well. He really did.
Sometimes these canines make it perfectly clear how they feel about being brought to justice. Then they throw themselves on the mercy of the court. This dog, also in on a barking charge, had his day in court, but his owner didn't like the sentence. Keep the dog in the house?
No.
And you don't like that?
No, I don't like it.
Are you going to do it?
No, I'm going to move out. I'm going to sell my house and move out.
By not dogging the regular court system with these disputes, the taxpayers save $3,500 a day. A howling success any way you look at it. Gary Shepard, ABC News, Los Angeles.
Sure, Gary. That's our report on World News Tonight. Tomorrow, our Person of the Week. I'm Peter Jennings. Good night.
They are people who have touched someone, hurt someone, changed someone, people you should know more about. Person of the Week, tomorrow on ABC's World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Thursday, Walter Matthau and Robin Williams.
That's what to shoot a person's gun?
The Survivors.
26 teams began the season in a quest to this trophy. Now the final challenge remains. The 1987 World Series begins Saturday on ABC Sports.